Long ago, the Nigerian power grid was said to be under the care of a powerful spirit named Uweleli, a mischievous being who lived in the mountains where electricity was generated. Uweleli had the power to control the flow of electricity across the land, deciding whether homes, businesses, and cities would be blessed with light or plunged into darkness. In ancient times, Uweleli was a generous and hardworking spirit, ensuring that the people had light during the day and night. But over time, the greed and mismanagement of humans began to anger the spirit. Those tasked with maintaining the grid took shortcuts, siphoned resources meant to improve infrastructure, and ignored Uweleli's warnings. As a result, Uweleli began to punish the people by randomly cutting off power. It started small, with brief blackouts, but as the years went by and corruption grew worse, Uweleli's anger increased. The spirit would collapse the grid suddenly, usually at the worst possible moment, during football matches, important government announcements, or late-night family gatherings. The people soon learned to expect these blackouts, viewing them as a kind of game played by the mischievous spirit. Some say that Uweleli is testing the patience of the people, waiting for them to demand better leadership and transparency in managing their power supply. Others believe that the spirit will only be satisfied once the people take matters into their own hands and address the root causes of the collapsing grid: corruption, poor maintenance, and lack of investment in sustainable energy. The people have learned to live with the spirit's unpredictable nature, making jokes about NEPA, National Electric Power Authority, and using phrases like "up NEPA" when the lights come back, as if Uweleli had been convinced, just for a moment, to restore power. The origins of Uweleli's wrath. Uweleli was said to be a benevolent and playful spirit who enjoyed watching the country grow and prosper. In the early days, the land was full of potential, with boundless resources and a bright future. The rivers, full of energy and promise, flowed through lush valleys where engineers dreamt of harnessing their power for the benefit of all. The sun, ever-present and golden, beamed with possibilities. The winds carried the hopes of an industrious people ready to leap into modernity. Uweleli, as the guardian of energy, was excited to be a part of this. The spirit worked alongside the early visionaries, ensuring that the elements would cooperate. Rivers were channeled to power turbines, and power stations were erected, blessed by Uweleli's invisible hand. As the nation embarked on its journey toward development, Uweleli glowed with pride, watching over every wire, every transmission line, and every flicker of light in the homes of the people. However, over time, things began to change. It is said that Uweleli started noticing cracks, first in the physical infrastructure, and then in the moral fabric of those responsible for maintaining the power grid. The cracks widened as greed seeped into the system, where government officials and contractors sought to enrich themselves at the expense of the people. The very lifeblood of the grid, funds allocated for its maintenance and expansion, was siphoned away into private pockets, leaving the system to falter. At first, Uweleli tried to warn the people. The spirit would cause minor disruptions, flickering lights, small power outages in select areas, hoping to get the attention of those in charge. But the warnings were ignored. Officials paid lip service to solving the issues while continuing their profiteering, and the people, growing accustomed to the inconveniences, learned to cope in their own ways, buying generators, installing inverters, and developing an almost fatalistic acceptance of the situation. As Uweleli's frustration grew, so did the magnitude of the disruptions. One night, during a major national event, a football match between Nigeria and a foreign team watched by millions across the country, the power grid collapsed entirely, plunging cities into darkness at a critical moment in the game. The people's outcry was immediate and fierce, with many blaming NEPA, which had already become a symbol of inefficiency. Others whispered of Uweleli's wrath, believing that the spirit had finally lost patience with the humans. But the true cause of the collapse lay hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, corruption, and mismanagement. The power stations, neglected and underfunded, were failing. Engineers, underpaid and demoralized, could not perform the necessary maintenance. Meanwhile, officials in charge of managing the power sector deflected blame, offering vague promises of improvement without addressing the real issues. Uwilele, it is said, looked down from the mountains in sorrow. The spirit had not wanted to bring such widespread darkness, but the arrogance and negligence of those in power left no choice. It was not just the grid that had collapsed, it was the trust between the people and their leaders. In the aftermath, as the people lit their candles and turned on their generators, Uwilele sent another sign. This time, the spirit appeared in dreams to some, speaking of the path forward. The message was simple but profound. Only through honesty, accountability, and unity can the light return. The darkness will persist until the people demand more, and until those in power care for the grid as they once cared for themselves. Despite the frequent grid collapses, Nigerians have shown incredible resilience. This resilience has become a part of the folktale itself, as the people adapt, innovate, and find ways to move forward even in the face of systemic failures. Uwilele may be punishing the country's leadership, but the people have learned to thrive in spite of the spirit's anger. In urban centers, where power outages are most common, businesses have learned to operate around the blackouts. Generators hum in the background as a constant companion to daily life, providing light, sound, and hope. In markets, traders swap stories of who has the best generator or where to find the most affordable fuel. In homes, families gather around candlelight, using the time without electricity to reconnect, tell stories, or simply enjoy each other's company. This adaptive resilience has given rise to another part of the folktale, the idea that Uwilele is not just a vengeful spirit, but also a teacher. The spirit, in its frustration, is trying to teach the people the value of self-reliance, ingenuity, and community. By cutting off the power at random moments, Uwilele is forcing Nigerians to confront their reliance on external forces and reminding them that true power lies within their own hands. Some even say that Uwilele watches over the inventors and entrepreneurs who are working on alternative energy solutions. Those who invest in solar panels, wind turbines, and other renewable energy sources are said to have the spirit's blessing, as they represent the future, a future where the grid is no longer necessary, and the people generate their own power independently of corrupt systems. At the heart of the folktale is a deep critique of leadership. Uwilele's wrath is not directed at the ordinary people, but at those who have been entrusted with the responsibility of managing the nation's resources. In many versions of the story, the spirit appears before the leaders of the nation, warning them that their greed and negligence will bring ruin not just to the grid, but to the entire country. The leaders, however, are depicted as short-sighted and self-serving. They build grand palaces for themselves, filled with imported generators and luxurious comforts, while the people struggle in the dark. Uwilele's warnings fall on deaf ears, as the leaders believe that they are immune to the consequences of their actions. But the spirit, in its wisdom, knows that no one can escape the consequences of a collapsing grid. Even the leaders, with all their wealth and power, will eventually be affected. The folktale often ends with a prophecy: a day will come when the grid collapses so completely that no generator, no inverter, no alternative power source will be able to save anyone. On that day, the leaders will realize that they, too, are dependent on the same system as the people, and they will face the full wrath of Uwilele. Despite the grim predictions in the folktale, there is always a glimmer of hope. Uwilele, though angry, is not an evil spirit. The grid's collapse is not an irreversible curse, but a challenge, an opportunity for redemption. The spirit's message is clear: if the people demand accountability from their leaders, and if the leaders prioritize the welfare of the nation over their own personal gain, the grid can be restored, and the light will return. In the modern retelling of the folktale, this path forward is often linked to technological innovation and political reform. The spirit encourages the people to embrace new energy solutions, such as solar and wind power, which are seen as more sustainable and less prone to the corruption and mismanagement that have plagued the traditional power grid. Moreover, the folktale calls for a new generation of leaders who are not beholden to the corrupt practices of the past, but who are committed to transparency, accountability, and the well-being of the people. Uwileli's prophecy suggests that when such leaders rise, the spirit will bless the nation once again, ensuring that the power grid becomes a symbol of strength and unity, rather than a source of frustration and division. In the final chapter of the folktale, a new generation of Nigerians begins to rise. These young leaders, engineers, and activists are inspired by Uwileli's teachings. They see the frequent blackouts not as a curse, but as a call to action. Across the country, grassroots movements are forming, calling for an end to the corruption that has plagued the power sector for so long. Young engineers are working tirelessly to develop alternative energy solutions, collaborating with international partners to bring solar and wind power to even the most remote areas of the country. Communities are coming together to demand better governance, organizing protests and campaigns to hold their leaders accountable. And slowly, Uwileli begins to take notice. The spirit sees that the people are no longer content to live in darkness. They are demanding change, not just in their power grid, but in their entire system of governance. They are calling for leaders who will serve the people, rather than themselves. As the new generation takes charge, the grid begins to stabilize. Blackouts become less frequent, and the nation's reliance on generators diminishes. Uwileli, satisfied that the people have learned the importance of self-reliance and accountability, begins to lift the curse. The folktale ends on a hopeful note, with the people finally in control of their own power, both literally and figuratively. Uwileli, no longer a wrathful spirit, becomes a guardian once again, watching over the nation as it moves toward a brighter future. Moral of the folktale: transformation through accountability. At its core, the folktale of the collapsing power grid is about the need for transformation, both in leadership and in society as a whole. It reflects the deep frustrations of Nigerians with the state of their power infrastructure, but also highlights the resilience and ingenuity of the people in the face of adversity. The frequent collapse of the power grid serves as a metaphor for the broader issues facing the country: corruption, mismanagement, and the failure of leadership. But the story also offers hope, suggesting that through accountability, innovation, and community, the people can reclaim their power, both literally and metaphorically. In this modern folktale, Uwileli is not just a spirit of energy but a symbol of the potential that exists within the nation. The spirit's wrath is a reminder that power, in all its forms, must be managed wisely and fairly. And when the people and their leaders finally understand this lesson, the light will shine once more, brighter than ever before.